Hare Krishna, Sundaranand Prabhu, can you start sharing the screen, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Today I didn't prepare any slides, Mataji.
Oh, okay. No worries,
Yes,
Prabhu, no
yes,
worries.
Yeah,
No
sure,
worries.
Mataji. Yes, ma'am.
Can you start your video, Prabhu? We'll start the class. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to Bhakti Sangha. Welcome to evening Srimad Bhagavatam summary session. Today we have His Grace Sundaranand Prabhu to enlighten us on the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 24. And Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu, for your valuable time and association and giving such a sweet classes always and encouraging all of us to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Your eagerness to read Srimad Bhagavatam is very encouraging and it's inspiring to all of us, Prabhu. I now hand over the call to you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Let me offer my prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Ajnanatimirantasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Yes. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So thank you very much for your association today. So we can discuss this wonderful chapter, 24th chapter of third canto. The chapter is titled The Renunciation of Kardamuni. The chapter is full of instructions by Sri Prabhupada and by personal example of Kardamuni also. And Kardamuni and Kapilidev. There's a personal example. We can learn a lot from this chapter. So before we go into this chapter, I'll give a brief overview. So like most of you probably know, second and third canto is primarily subject matter between discussion between Sukadeva Goswami and Parishit Maharaj. And within that Sukadeva Goswami Parishit Maharaj conversation is a sub-conversation, the inner loop they call it, some devotees call it. The inner loop is conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. But how did we get to the Maitreya and Vidura conversation? Initially, in the first chapter of the third canto, Parishit Maharaj asked the question to Sukadeva Goswami, can you please describe about Maitreya and Vidura's conversations? They must have discussed about Krishna Kada, like that he asked. So, in response to that question, first Sukadeva Goswami describes how Vidura left the palace in Hastinapura and he started going to pilgrimage, and then he met Uddhava, and they both have conversation initially in the first three chapters, like second chapter, third chapter, and fourth chapter of the third canto, where Uddhava goes into ecstasy, suddenly thinking about Krishna, and he describes about some passages about Krishna also, and then he redirects with the Vidura to go to meet an elderly devotee, that is Maitreya Muni. So there are two reasons our acharyas describe that Uddhava wanted to go on the service that Krishna has given him, which is to go to the Himalayas, especially where Narnara and Rishi are there. That is where he was meant to go. So Badrikashram. So that's where he was going on the instruction of Krishna before he left the planet. So that is one reason he's directed him to Maitreya Muni. Second reason he directed him is as a matter of Vaishnava etiquette. Vidura is elder to Uddhava. But Maitreya Muni also heard the conversation between Krishna and Uddhava. So he wanted Vidura to be instructed by an elderly personality when the option is available. That's why he directed him to Maitreya Muni. So then Vidura and Maitreya Muni meet then, and after Vidura and Maitreya Muni meet, like any nice devotees do, they talk about Krishna Katha. Instead of talking mundane things, they talk about Krishna Katha. So what do they talk about? Vidura asks several questions to Maitreya Muni in the beginning of the 5th chapter about how did this creation happen, describe about Purusha Avataras, describe about Leela Avataras, like that. Then Maitreya Muni describes primarily two broad topics. Sarga are the primary creation where the material elements, initial elements are created by the Supreme Lord. And then Visarga, briefly he concludes. Visarga, he doesn't elaborate. How Lord Brahma does the secondary creation using the elements that are created by Supreme Lord. So those topics cover from 5th chapter to about 12th chapter. Then Vidura asks in the 12th chapter, 13th chapter, about Swayambhu Manu's activities. Swayambhu Manu's activities. Remember, Swayambhu Manu is one of the sons of Lord Brahma. So he was meant to create progeny. So then, but before he creates progeny, he sees that Earth planet is gone into the Garbhodaka ocean. So Swayambhu Manu asks Lord Brahma, what to do? There's no place for humans to live here. Please help. Then Brahma responds to that. Brahma also doesn't know what to do. So Brahma meditates on Supreme Lord, praying for Supreme Lord's help. And Supreme Lord, sure enough, if he's there to protect his devotees always, to help in their devotees' duties also. So Supreme Lord comes as a Varaha Avatara. So that Varaha Avatara is described. So remember, the question started with understanding Swayambhu Manu's activities. While doing that, while he just started, then the diversion came about Varahadev. So now Varahadev pastime is described by Maitreya Muni for about 5 chapters, 14 to 19 chapters. There's about 6 chapters he describes. And that description, we saw Vaikuntha Loka glories, we saw about how Jaya and Vijay came to as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and we heard about how Hiranyaksha fights with Varahadev. All those chapters we heard. That's about Varahadev's incarnation. So the first section of third canto was focused on creation, primary and secondary creation, Sarga and Visarga. Next section talks about Varahadeva Avatara for several chapters. Then Vidura revised the original topic. Remember, original topic was about Swayambhu Manu activities, right? That's what he asked. And while describing Swayambhu Manu activities, he said Yat is not there. So then Varahadev came and described Varahadev activities. Now he goes back to that topic again. So it's described when some speakers go diversion like this, sometimes they go take a diversion to describe nice Krishna Katha and they come back on their own. Sometimes audience can redirect them one more time to remind them of the original topic like that. So Vidura asked him again the same question to Maitreya Muni. Again in the 20th chapter he asked about secondary creation, Visarga, that is done by Lord Brahma basically. So then now the conversation is happening about Swayambhuva dynasty. That is started in 21st chapter. In 21st chapter, he describes how Swayambhu Manu has 2 sons, Uttanapada and Priyavrata, and 3 daughters, Devahuti, Akuti, and Prasuti. So once he describes about these 3 daughters and 2 sons, interestingly, he suddenly starts to describe about, he wants to describe the Swayambhu Manu's dynasty. So starts with Devahuti now. So now rest of the 3rd canto till the 1st chapter of the 4th canto will be describing Devahuti and her children and what happened like that. That is the description for the rest of the 3rd canto from about 21st chapter onwards. Now we're in 24th chapter. That is why in the description of Swayambhu Manu dynasty, we are now in the description of Devahuti's descendants basically. So that's why we are here in the conversation of Devahuti and Kardamuni. That's the overall context. Now in this context that is going for 4 chapters, 21st to 24 chapters, we are at the culmination of this pastime, describing about Kardamuni and Devahuti's ideal household life. After this, we'll hear about Devahuti's further descendants from 25th next chapter onwards. So before that, so now the last 3 chapters we heard about how Kardamuni performed austerities because Lord Brahma told him, can you please create Praja like that? Because he's a Prajapati. So Prajapati means somebody who is generating living entities to populate the universe. So with that understanding, Kardamuni, to perform his duty, he does the austerities in devotional service. Then Supreme Lord personally appears, we heard in the previous chapters, And there's a reason I'm explaining this little bit more detail, because we'll talk about the Varnashrama also in this chapter. That's one of the key topic in this chapter. That's why I'm describing these aspects. So that context will help in that angle. So what did Kardamani do in the beginning of his life? He cultivated devotion service, engaged in devotion service, and he engaged in meditation, which is appropriate for that age. And then he saw the Supreme Lord face to face. Then Supreme Lord gave him, so he asked Supreme Lord for a suitable wife to marry so that he can perform his duty of creating praja, or citizens, or people, or living entities. So then Supreme Lord voluntarily, Supreme Lord told him that he will come as his son also. That's what we'll see in this chapter again, how he comes as a Kapila like that. That was happened in the earlier part of Kardamuni's life. Then we heard about the later, next time, after that we heard about how Swayambhu personally came along with his wife Shatarupa, along with his daughter Devahuti, searching for Kardamuni, and he personally requested him to accept his daughter as his wife. Of course, there's a lot of details how there's wonderful cooperation between Brahmana and Kshatriya also was discussed in this. So in terms of Varnashrama cooperation, how there's cooperation between Brahmana and Kshatriya at that time. So that's also described in that section, that theme. Because today's one of the key topics is Varnashrama, that's why I'm highlighting that aspect also. So then, after Kardamuni and Swayambhu Manu have a initial conversation, and both of them appreciate each other nicely, and then finally, Swayambhu Manu gives his daughter Devahuti in marriage to Kardamuni. And then we heard last chapter especially how Devahuti was so respectfully, so affectionately understanding the mind of her husband, and with lots of good qualities in submissive mood, she served her husband, like that we heard. And she not even care for her own comforts, like that is described, comforts, or not so much wants, or even some needs also. So she served him nicely, we discussed in the last chapter. So at the end of the last chapter, we heard last week how um, Devahuti places a request before her husband, and then for her children, and then Kardamuni nicely manifests luxurious mansion and aerial palace. I think it's called aerial mansion. I think it's called, and then he makes her beautiful again, suitable for the union, and then he expands as 9 forms we heard in the last chapter, and how he gives her 9 daughters. And towards the end of the chapter, Devahuti expresses beautiful sentiments and wishes and statements to Kardamuni, we heard. Basically, she explains how the glories of devotion service, glories of association with sadhus, and especially she also expresses a little bit of distressing condition, that how she lost an opportunity. She had a wonderful opportunity of associating with her husband, who is a very elevated Brahmana, very elevated devotee, Kardamuni. She had a wonderful opportunity, but she wasted by not inquiring about self-realization from him, but instead she only asked about children from him. Like that she laments. That is one lamentation we heard. Another thing she also talks about is, now you're ready to go to the forest, but who will take care of me? Please give me fearlessness, that like that he describes. So by saying fearlessness, she's indirectly requesting him to give her a son also. In fact, Supreme Lord already ordered that son will come. He will come as son, right? For the Kadamuni and Devahuti. So she indirectly requests him to give fearlessness, and basically requesting him to give a son also. So that's how the last chapter ended primarily. Primarily, her glorifying her husband's high position and a wonderful opportunity she had to associate with the sadhu, and her lamenting little bit. I'm saying little bit, we'll discuss that also little bit, about how she not utilized the opportunity fully of devotee association. And then she requested fearlessness. If you remember in the beginning of previous section, in this section, I believe in the beginning of the previous chapter itself, Kadamani tells that I'm so pleased with your service. I want to give you fearlessness. I want to give you Bhagavad Prasad. Like that he says. But then at that time, she doesn't accept it readily. She doesn't reject it, but she doesn't accept it wholeheartedly. But now if you notice, she's asking fearlessness again at the end of the chapter. So that's where the last chapter ended. Now going into this chapter, 24th chapter, which is titled of Renunciation of Kardamani. So one thing we can notice in the way the chapters are titled based on what is the key thing happening in this chapter. Not necessarily that is the only thing happening in the chapter. That's number one. So many times chapter titles come based on what is happening toward the end of the chapter, but the essential aspect of the chapter like that. So that's why renunciation of Kardamani is indicated here. Of course, what happened in this chapter, in the beginning of the chapter, is how Kardamani relieves the distress of his wife Devahuti, and how he gives her a son, Kapila Dev, who is the Supreme Lord himself, coming as in Amsa form or as a direct expansion as Kapila Dev, Supreme Lord coming. And then Kardamani gets ready to go. Then he seeks permission from Kapila Dev, and then Kapila Dev gives permission. And then Kardamani goes to the forest and takes sannyas, and he goes back to Godhead. That's the overall summary of the chapter. Essentially, before Kardamani takes sannyas or renunciation, he makes sure his wife is well situated, and he seeks the permission of the Supreme Lord Kapila Dev also. That's a brief summary. Now we'll go into the details of this chapter, highlighting few aspects with wonderful instructions that Srila Prabhupada gives in the purports also. So the first verse starts with Kardamani trying to pacify his wife Devahuti. So he's recalling the words that Supreme Lord spoke to him. What are the words he spoke? He spoke that he's going to come as his son, like that. So then he started speaking, it's described. What did he speak? He starts with, don't be disappointed with yourself. That's how he starts with. And he assures her that Supreme Lord will shortly come, enter your womb as your son. So this is important principle here that we can learn. That is describing, he's encouraging her not to be disappointed with herself. So sometimes is not that disappointment is not good. In our practice in devotee's life also, sometimes disappointment or dissatisfaction is helpful sometimes. So as long as it doesn't lead us to mode of ignorance, tamasic way, which is we go into depression, we go to, oh, I'm so bad, and then we don't do anything enthusiastically to progress in our devotion service. That is not good. That means staying in a stagnant position, not engaging in devotion service, just lamenting about our bad qualities is not good. However, some amount of dissatisfaction is good if it is combined with enthusiasm to progress in devotion service. It is combined with some forward movement in devotion service. Then some disappointment is helpful. For example, if you are overconfident that I am the greatest devotee in the world, then we can never grow in devotion service. So some amount of devotion service with honest introspection, with some guidance from mentor and spiritual master is always helpful for us. So that way we can progress in spiritual life. So in that sense, little disappointment is good for us, but not disappointment that leads to mode of ignorance. That's one lesson we can learn from this verse. Second thing we can learn is how the Kardamani pacified his wife with the right knowledge at the right time. So we'll see later on how avidya can be eradicated through knowledge, transcendental knowledge also we'll see in coming verses. So now going to the third verse, Kardamani is saying that you undertaken sacred vows, so God will bless you. So interesting thing in this verse is, he's saying you should engage in devotion service. He's not, remember previous verse he said, don't worry, Supreme Lord will enter your womb as your son. Now, somebody may think, wow, that's wonderful. Supreme Lord has come in my womb. So I don't need to do anything. I just stay silent. No activity anymore. No austerity, no penance. I can be just sit tight. Everything will happen automatically. Like that, somebody will think, right? No, he's saying engage in devotional service. How? With by acceptance, by self-control, he's saying, with austerity and penance. That self-control means with controlling the mind and senses, which is one of the wonderful qualities of a Brahmana we need to cultivate also. So that is one thing he says, and also by engaging in charity and by following the religious principles. That's how we should engage in devotional service, he's saying. So now, why he's saying? Because that is the constitutional position of all of us. It is, we don't do devotional service to get money, to get good health, or to become free from anxieties, to become free from fear. That is not the primary motivation for doing our devotional service. Even though all these things Supreme Lord can give us if he desires, but that's not the primary motivation of devotional service. Our primary motivation of devotional service is to please Krishna. And because of our duty, because of our constitutional position, that's what satisfies us as a soul. So because that we are doing devotional service. So that is the other lesson we can learn from here. Not to do devotional service for a certain material goal like that. Then we cannot continue devotional service. Remember, devotional service is ahetuki apratigata. From first canto, second chapter, we hear that. Ahetuki means uninterrupted, unmotivated. Ahetuki means, hetu means motivation or a cause. Ahetuki means unmotivated. And apratika means uninterrupted. That means we do everyday devotional service. Not that today I'm not feeling like it, let me not chant. Today I'm not feeling like it, let me not read. Not like that. Uninterrupted, we'll do devotional service. That's why we say Nityam Bhagavata Sevayare. And then Ahetuki means no material cause. That means only to please Krishna, we engage in devotional service. So that is the other thing we learn from here. That means engaging in devotional service always. In fact, we know from Lord Brahma's prayers in the 10th canto coming up also, that irrespective of the whether it's a happy situation or a sad situation in our life, we need to tolerate the situation and continue in our devotional service. So going to the fourth verse. Fourth verse is another beautiful verse. Remember, still Kardamuni is speaking these wise words to his wife Devhuti. If you notice, Kardamuni is very elevated and is giving this transcendental knowledge to his wife. Later on we'll see is functioning like a spiritual master because he's very qualified. Not all husbands may be qualified to function like a spiritual master, but in this case is the perfect ideal household life where husband is very qualified. That's why he's giving instruction to his wife like a spiritual master. So what is he saying here? So Supreme Lord, when you worship him, he'll spread my name and fame. That's what he's saying. And then he's saying, he'll vanquish the knot of your heart by becoming your son and by teaching knowledge of Brahman. So basically the word used is Hridaya Grandhi. So knot of the heart is called Hridaya Grandhi. Grandhi means knot. Knot means generally when you find two ropes get tied such a way that they don't open sometimes. Sometimes very hard to open a knot like that, right? Some of the knots have names also, Gregory knot, like that. The only way is cutting. You cannot take out any way, even with needle, anything you can do. So that's what is knot of the heart is being described here, Hridaya Grandhi. What is the knot of the heart? Prabhupada explains us nicely for our benefit. He says, knot of the heart is attachment in our heart. That is what is called the knot of the heart. And how other explanation Prabhupada gives, this Hridaya Grandhi is identification with material body. That is what is the Hridaya Grandhi. This term is used many places in scriptures. So that's why it's important for us to understand. Basically, it's a bodily identification. Identification is matter. That's what is called Hridaya Grandhi. That is very hard to go because always we'll be thinking, if something happens to me, no, that should not happen. I should always be happy. I should not suffer. That is the primary goal most people are operating in their life. More happiness to the body, less suffering to the body. That's all is the principle of life for many people. Of course, not devotees, but generally. So that is a Hridaya Grandhi. And how does it go? He's saying, your son, Supreme Lord, as your son, will give spiritual knowledge. That's how we can cut this knot. That means by any other material means, we cannot remove this material identification, bodily identification. But by hearing from spiritual master, spiritual instructions, through that Guru Sadhu Shastra, through the spiritual instruction and spiritual knowledge, we can cut this knot. Otherwise, by ourselves, with any amount of material endeavor, we cannot do anything about it. That is the main thing we can understand from this verse. Now going to the text 5. Text 5 is describing, now is going back to the conversation bit. Now remember where Kardamuni is talking to Devahuti. Now is going to little bit outer conversation. Maitreya Muni describing to Vidura. So he's saying how Devahuti has full faith and respect for the instructions of her husband. And having faith and respect for the instructions and directions of her husband, she engaged in the worship of the Supreme Lord. That means she engaged in the devotion service. So that's the important principle for us also. If you notice, in this section of 4 chapters, in many places actually in scriptures, when the relationship between wife and husband is described, it is very analogous or analogous to relationship between disciple and spiritual master also, Guru and Sishya. So that's why Prabhupada's purport also is comparing with this relationship with disciple and spiritual master. So he's imparting wonderful instructions for us through this pastime. So he is saying, similarly, like how Devahuti has full faith and respect in the direction of her husband, similarly, as disciples, we should have full faith and full respect in the instructions of our spiritual master. So, and he quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur saying how spiritual master instructions should become our life and soul. So that's the important principle for us to learn. That means it's not just hanging around with spiritual master. That's not the most important. Most important is hearing from spiritual master, understanding the mood of the spiritual master, understanding instructions from the spiritual master, and apply the instructions of the spiritual master. Of course, this is also a broad subject wherein it includes general instructions and specific instructions also, both of them. General instructions are like chanting our rounds, following 4 regulative principles, engaging in deity worship, like that general instructions. Specific instructions may be some particular service he wanted us to do, like that. So we should follow the instructions of spiritual master as our life and soul. And their point Prabhupada makes in the purport is that Supreme Lord will appear only when he's pleased with our service, like that Prabhupada writes. Now going to the next section, about 6th verse onwards. Then after this conversation happened, after Devahuti continued devotion service, after some time, many years is described, Krishna entered the semen of Kardama, appeared in the womb of Devahuti, like that is described. So in the purport, Prabhupada emphasizes 2 main points. One is, just because it's described that Supreme Lord entered the semen of Kardama, and then like that he entered the womb of Devahuti, we should not think that this Kapila is just an ordinary human being. He's like us only, like that. We should not make that mistake. In whatever Leela Supreme Lord performs, according to his own wish and will, he still remains the Supreme Lord. That is one point Prabhupada is making the purport. Another important point Prabhupada is making the purport is that Supreme Lord is fully independent. So he can do whatever he wishes to do. That means we cannot say, if he's Supreme Lord, how can he come like an ordinary jiva? He cannot come like ordinary jiva. Not like that. In fact, our acharyas explain, Supreme Lord manifests sometimes the common man like behavior, emotions, even bewilderment sometimes. Like when Krishna's Leela we see, when Lord Brahma steals the calves, for some time he searches. In that section it is described, Krishna is bewildered actually, like that. And also, of course, our acharyas nicely explain, by his own Leela Shakti, like that, for his own pastimes, like that. So like that, Krishna is always independent and is never forced like an ordinary living entity to take birth or to take a material body. His body is not material. We'll see in the coming verses how his body is described as transcendental. So now Supreme Lord entered the womb of Devhuti. Then is described how demigods were very happy in the sky. So it's described demigods were sounding musical instruments, Gandharvas who were wonderful in singing, they were singing the glories of the Lord. And then it's described Apsaras were dancing in joyful mood. And then demigods were freely flying in the sky and showering flowers. Prabhupada refers to how residents of Siddhaloka travel in the space freely. We know about Narad Muni, who's called a transcendental spaceman. Similarly, Siddhaloka residents also can go fly easily, it seems, without an aeroplane like that. And they were showering flowers is described. And they were very satisfied, it seems. And then in text 9 is described, Brahma, after understanding that Supreme Lord in the form of Kapil Dev entered the womb of Devhuti, he, along with his associates like Marichi and other sages, even Kumaras and Narada Muni, he came to the Karda Muni's hermitage, which is on the bank of Saraswati river, it is described. Now going to the next verse, 10th verse. Let me see. I made some notes for this verse. Let me pull it up. Yeah. So Supreme Lord appeared, is described, Supreme Lord in his quality of pure existence appeared in the womb of Devhuti is described. So in this context, Prabhupada describes that Supreme Lord and is in the pure goodness, Suddha Sattva state or Vasudeva state. And pure goodness is there in spiritual world. In the material world, goodness is always contaminated with some amount of passion and ignorance. And then he describes how goodness is helpful for us to understand Supreme Lord's form, qualities, and nature also. Of course, we know just mode of goodness is not enough to understand Supreme Lord. Mode of goodness helps us to practice devotion service nicely, as we hear in the later in the 11th canto also. There's elaborate description of how mode of goodness is suitable for a practicing devotee, and as he gets uh, higher in devotion service, then he can leave even the mundane goodness focus, like that also is described. So that's the other thing Prabhupada is describing here, the glorification of goodness. And is also describing another point, that how Supreme Lord in his direct expansion or as Amsa or expansion as Kala or have same potency like the original Supreme Lord also, like that is describing. And the 11th verse, Brahma worship the Supreme Lord with very, very happily, it seems, with glad and senses and pure heart, it seems. That's what described in the, yeah. And not only worship the Supreme Lord in the womb, but he also glorified Kardamuni and Devhuti, because they got the position of being the mother and father of the Supreme Lord. That means Supreme Lord mercy is there for them. That's why he glorifies them also, is described in the purport by Prabhupada. Now 12th verse is described what Brahma is saying now to Kardamuni is being described now. He's saying that you completely accepted, he's talking to Kardamuni, he's saying you accepted my instructions without any duplicity at all. And you showed proper respect for my instructions. And you worship me properly. So these are the important things for us also to understand. Basically, Kardamuni carried out instructions of his own spiritual master and father, Lord Brahma, without any cheating. That's what is described. That means he carried out the orders of spiritual master properly. And that's a instruction for us also, that we also need to take instruction of spiritual master nicely and accept it properly and execute it nicely also. Spiritual master is not always there with us to see, but he can understand our purity. He can understand our obedience to his instructions. And only by following obediently spiritual master instructions, we can grow in devotion service very nicely. So that's the emphasis Prabhupada is writing in the purport also. And another point Prabhupada is making in the purport is that when we follow the instructions of a spiritual master who is in the bona fide parampara system, then we can even overcome the 4 defects of a human being also. Especially because the cheating topic came, no cheating topic came. That's why Prabhupada is describing that also. That means by following instructions of spiritual master, that gives us the empowerment to overcome the limitations we have as a human being, as a conditioned being like that. Generally, liberated souls are beyond the 4 defects is described. We hear the 4 defects in the Upanishad, right? So here the cheating is one of the main things that is highlighted here. So now that is the 12th verse. Going to 13th verse, Brahmadev is saying that son, like how son should render service to their father exactly to this extent, like that. That means like you setting an ideal example of how son should serve father, like that. And then he's saying one should obey the command of his father or speech master with yes sir, like that. So this is important point again. We should take the instruction of speech master without any argument, like that. Prabhupada writes in the purport, like yes sir. Of course, if our father is not conducive to spiritual path, then our biological father, then we can always say uh, sure, but we may not execute it exactly like they want. If it is not conducive to spiritual master, what are instructions or ideas they're giving. But if it's spiritual master, we should follow fully. If father is conducive to spirituality, then we can follow their instructions as long as they're favorable to our surrender to Krishna. Now going to text 14, Lord Brahma then appreciated the 9 daughters of Kardamuni and Devahuti. How did he appreciate? 2 main attributes he talks about. One is he appreciates how beautiful they are with thin waist, number 1. Number 2, that is the physical form. Number 2, he appreciates them as very chaste. So this is important. So beauty is not just based on the physical form for anyone. Beauty is also based on qualities that we cultivate. Even as devotees, we are beautiful. We are considered beautiful by Krishna by seeing our qualities. That is what pleases Krishna and our spiritual master the most. That's why we cultivate good qualities as given by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita and as we learn from Srimad Bhagavatam, like this. So being chaste is one of the wonderful quality for a woman, for a wife towards husband, and similarly for a disciple to be chaste to his spiritual master also. So generally when I give this, I mentioned briefly. So generally how Srimad Bhagavatam purports, Prabhupada talks about the relationship of a wife serving spiritually elevated husband nicely, and then husband should be spiritually elevated and serving spiritual master nicely, similar way, fully like that. Then wife will benefit fully also. So that's about 14th verse where Brahma is appreciating his daughter's beauty in terms of form, in terms of qualities. Then he says, please give your daughter in marriage to the sages, he says, 9 sages. So original sages, he is asking them to give in marriage. Why is he asking? So that the best daughters will marry the best husbands, the best sages. So then they will have the best quality children. That's why he's asking them to give proper marriage. And he tells them according to yatha shilam, according to their temperament, and yatha ruchi, according to their taste also. So Prabhupada focuses on this purport, how when selecting a husband for our daughter or when we are arranging marriage for our children, what are the considerations, chief considerations we should have? This doesn't mean these are the only considerations, but these are the chief considerations, like that is writing in purport. What are those? The character and taste, like that is saying. Those are the important factors to be considered before marrying, because there should be certain compatibility between them in terms of character and taste. Not in terms of taste of I like this sabji, you like that sabji, not that they're talking about. So this taste is about generally what kind of mentality they have, what kind of, for example, Prabhupada writes in the purport, there are godly character and demonic character. Of course, we know from Bhagavata, Sura and Asura, divine and demonic qualities, right? Somebody with divine qualities, if they marry a demonic quality husband, then that is not compatible. Similarly, demonic quality wife marries a divine quality husband, that is not compatible. Either both should have divine qualities or both should have demonic qualities. And Prabhupada is giving practical in the purport how that can be understood easily, not just by interview process, not just by observing for some time, but also in the olden days, especially astrological charts are also looked at. So that way we can see the compatibility also. Of course, the main consideration for marriage is how they're both interested in spiritual progress and both are wanting to practice spiritual life and progress in spiritual life. That's one of the main consideration. Along with that, these two will come, character and taste also. That's what Prabhupada is writing. Otherwise, if you don't see these considerations, it will only result in divorce because they're not happy with each other. They're not satisfied like that. So, going to 16th verse. Now, Burma is still talking to Kardamani. He says, now I know Supreme Lord has appeared as an incarnation of his internal energy, he is saying. That means Supreme Lord is not forced to enter by Mahamaya. Like ordinary jivas were forced to take a material body. Not like that. He appeared by his own wish as a in the as a with the in the realm of his internal energy or yoga maya like that. And then the purport Prabhupada is emphasizing that Supreme Lord also is a living entity, is not impersonal only. Impersonal is just an attribute of Supreme Lord like that. Going to 17th verse, he says, he's glorifying the Supreme Lord, how he's have a golden hair, how his Kapil Dev's eyes will be like lotus petals, his lotus feet will have marks of the lotus flowers, and he will uproot the deep-rooted desire for work in this material world. That means fruitive activities. Wanting to enjoy this way, that way, all that he will eliminate. Like that is describing. Brahma is describing what Kapil Dev will do. And then he told, now after talking to Dev, Kapil Dev, Kardamuni, Brahmadev is focusing their attention to Devahuti now in the 18th verse. He's saying, Kapil Dev, your son, will cut off the knots of your ignorance and doubt. Ignorance is described as avidya and doubt is described as samsaya. Those are two words used. So ignorance, avidya means forgetting our own real identity as spirit, soul, servant of Krishna, but thinking I am this body. So that avidya, he will destroy. How will destroy? By proper spiritual knowledge from dissatisfaction. That's how we can become free from bondage like that he is describing. So now he's saying your son will be the head of all perfected souls and he will increase your fame like that is describing to Devahuti. And then now after Brahma talked like this to Kardamuni and Devahuti, it goes to the outer conversation again. Maitreya Muni speaking to Vidura. He's saying, after speaking to Kardamuni and Devahuti, Lord Brahma, also known as Hamsa, on his swan carrier, he went along with 4 Kumaras back home, back to Brahmaloka or Satyaloka like that. So Prabhupada is writing two things in the purport. One is, Brahma is sometimes referred as Hamsa, it seems, because he can grasp the essence of everything. Like Hamsa, swan, can take out milk even if it is mixed with water like that, right? Brahma also can take out the essence of everything. That's why it's called as Hamsa sometimes it seems. And also Prabhupada is referring that why did Kumaras leave and Nardmuni leave, but Marichi and other sages did not leave yet? Because Kumaras were Naistika Brahmacharis. Naistika Brahmachari means those who don't even waste their semen at any time. They don't have any kind of sexual activity at all. So that's why they were not supposed to be there near the marriage ceremonies like that, that kind of ceremonies. So that's why they left like that is described. And then Maitreya Muni is still describing in the 21st verse that after Brahma left, Kardamuni handed over his 9 daughters in marriage to the 9 sages. And then their names are described in the next verse, 23rd verse and 24th verse. And then after they are all married, the sages went back to their homes, it seems, after taking permission from Kardamuni, their father-in-law. Then going to 26th verse, Kardamani understood Supreme Lord has descended. So he approached him in a secluded place, it is described. That means with no other disturbance, he is approaching Kapil Dev, his son, directly, Kardamani, with full understanding that is Supreme Lord, remember. So now Kardamani said, after a long time, the demigods of this universe became pleased with the suffering souls who are in mental entanglement because of their own misdeeds. That means demigods are all normally like Paradukka Dukki. They are feeling bad for all the suffering souls. That's why when they will approach periodically to Supreme Lord to descend and help the living entities who are suffering so much. So when Supreme Lord descends like this, demigods are pleased. Like that is indicating. Who's indicating? Um, Here Maitreya Muni is speaking to, this particular verse is spoken by Kardamani. Okay, that's one. And then to whom is speaking? Kapil Dev. That means he's glorifying Kapil Dev. That by your descent, all the demigods are pleased. Now he's saying, Kardamani is still saying, after many births, mature yogis, after so much of yoga practice, they can see your lotus feet. That means it's so difficult to see your lotus feet. But you are so merciful that you are giving that great fortune by coming over here to a householder home, like that is glorifying. This is a sign of gratitude in a devotee's heart. He's so grateful that Supreme Lord came. Not that, oh, I did a lot of tapasya, you are supposed to come. Okay, anyway you come. Like that. Thank you for coming. Not like that. He's so grateful Supreme Lord came. Because Supreme Lord is not obliged. Just because we are doing chanting 16 rounds, Supreme Lord is not obliged to do everything for us. So that's what is indicating here like that. In the 29th verse, he's saying, yeah, you are coming in the householder's home just to support your devotees. That means he's saying you have affection for your devotees. That's why you're coming. Normally, you don't come to every place like that. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that Lord lives wherever his pure devotees are always chanting and glorifying him. So one can understand Krishna only by devotion service. That's the other point Prabhupada is writing in the purport. Going to 30th verse, he says, Kardamani is still speaking. He's saying, my dear Lord, you decided in my home just to fulfill your word. What word? He told me that I'll appear as your son. Like that, right? To fulfill your promise, you are appearing. And also to disseminate the process of real knowledge, to give the real transcendental knowledge, you came here, like that is saying. This is another important principle we need to learn. Supreme Lord, when he's speaking, he keeps his word. So unless if his devotee's word is beyond his word, like we see in Mahabharata. So Supreme Lord, that's why he's glorified as truthful many times in Srimad Bhagavatam also. That's why he's glorifying here also. You came to fulfill your word, like that. And 31st verse, he's saying, my dear Lord, you don't have material form, but still you come in different transcendental variety, different forms you take up, different lila avataras you take up and come, like that is describing. So when he says no form, nirakara, that's the word Prabhupada commonly talks about. Here, the word is arupinaha is used. That means without form. That without form means Lord is not having any form. That's not the meaning. The meaning is Lord doesn't have a material body like us. Lord has a spiritual form. That is the point Prabhupada is making the purport. But still, he can come as different forms like Vishnu, Narayana, Narasimhadev, Rama. Like that, he can come in different forms. Those are all spiritual forms, variegated spiritual forms that are eternal, always like that. Now, going to text 32, he's saying, now he's after glorifying his form and after glorifying his nature as being truthful, now he's glorifying his lotus feet. How his lotus feet are a reservoir that always deserves to receive worshipful homage from all great sages. He's saying, I'm surrendered to your lotus feet, like that is praying. Kardamani to Kapila yeah. Then Prabhupada is writing, Prabhupada is focusing on one point that by worshipping the Supreme Lord, we can go back to the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, there is no other way to go back to Supreme Lord's abode, like that. Now, going to text 33, Kardamani is saying, I surrender unto you. Like that is surrendering to Krishna. So Prabhupada is emphasizing how Krishna is the cause of all causes, and Supreme Lord is also a living being with sentient feelings. But of course, is the supreme living being, is absolute. Like that, Prabhupada is writing the purport. Now, text 34. Now, after, if you notice, Kardamani offered obeisances, offered glorification to Kapiladev. Now he's placing a request in a kind way, in a submissive way. So he says, you are the Lord of all living entities. Since now you liberated me from the debts of my father. How? When you have a son, we can be liberated by Pitru Rana, they call it, debts of the father. So now you're liberated from the debts of my father, and all my desires are fulfilled. I wish to accept the Parivrajaka sannyasa order. Parivraja, this word is used. Itinerant mendicant, that's the word used, Prabhupada translating it as. So I want to take sannyas. So, and I want to think always about you in my heart, like that. So please give me permission, like that is requesting. Prabhupada writes in the purport two main things. One is, there are two kinds of devotees. One devotee is engaged in preaching work, and not only purifying himself, but also engaging in preaching work. They are called Ghostanandi, Prabhupada writes. And then normally Prabhupada uses the word Bhajananandi, but here in this purport he uses the word Atmanandi. That means those who are only thinking on me. I need to go back Godhead. I need to go back Godhead. I don't care about anybody, like that. So he is describing that here that Kardamani was in this category of Atmanandi, like that is describing, because he's only thinking about his going back to Godhead, like that. That's why he's planning to go but take sannyas, not for preaching purpose, but only to perfect his life, like that. So that is what Prabhupada is writing in purport. And going to the next verse is continuing this request now. In the next verse he says, oh, after he requested like that, Kapil Dev starts speak now. So it's 9:17. So I'll summarize briefly. So Kapil Dev starts speak saying that whatever I speak, either directly or through Shastra, scriptures, is authoritative in all respects for people of the world, like that. And then I have descended to fulfill this truth, like that he's saying. And then Kapil Dev emphasizes, purport Prabhupada is saying that Kardamuni's example is very instructive. So this is one of the very important instruction for us in this section. So I'll spend some time on it. Basically, Kardamuni has a Supreme Lord as his son. Then why is he going to the forest? That is instructive for us. Prabhupada is writing also in the purport that he is showing by his example that we should always follow the religious principles. That when you get a certain age, you should not still hanker around the family at the old age also. You should take either Vanaprastha or Sannyas ashram. So generally in the Vedic culture, up to 25 years of life is described as Brahmacharya ashram. Next is the Grihastha ashram, family life. Next is the Vanaprastha ashram, a retired life. Then is Sannyas ashram, a renounced life. Of course, in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada writes in the purport that is not compulsory to take renounced life unless somebody has that full qualities and full determination and full faith in Supreme Lord that he will take care of me. Otherwise, we should take Vanaprastha ashram and then slowly progress to perfection, like that Prabhupada writes in the purport. That means it is not compulsory to take sannyasa to achieve perfection, but we should always aim towards taking Vanaprastha. That is a point Prabhupada makes in this section broadly. So now Kapil Dev is is speaking to his father, right? Here in this example, Kardamani, he basically says that I appeared here. You can go as you desire, and you'll see me in your heart. And not only you'll be okay, my mother also will achieve perfection because of my giving knowledge, like that. He assures him. so that he's happy. He can go happily to the forest like that, not worried about his wife like that. That's the other thing he says. After that, Kadamani circumambulates around, and then he goes to the forest. He accepts Maunavrata and he fixes his mind fully on the Lord, and then he becomes liberated, and he actually goes back to Godhead. Is described in this section. So I want to spend some time on one central theme of this section, whole section, which is about Varnashrama principles. I'll take some time. I will refer to one slide, which is from, you probably know, Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Swami Maharaj, who, let me pull up that slide, who has a book called Summary Study of Srimad Bhagavatam. He has a summary study for Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, most of you know. It is freely available on his website, keshavswami.com, I think it's called. So in that, he gives this chart that summarizes the whole theme nicely, which is very important for all these 4 chapters, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, the central theme of this chapter. That's why I'll spend little time and then we'll end here. So basically, human life is meant for spiritual perfection. So to achieve spiritual perfection, Vedic culture establishes Varna and Ashramas. So, for example, in the early part of the life, you can see here, first 25 years I was describing as brahmachari. That means where the focus is on learning, training in scriptural knowledge, character and practical skills, all 3, not just learning theory only, character also and practical skills also. And then Grihastha ashram is characterized by earning. That means we take up family duties and we service to the other orders. That means Grihastha is the only one earning, right? So we take care of brahmachari, vanaprastha and sannyas ashram also. That's why charity is one of the important principles for Grihastha ashram, one important duty for Grihastha ashram, like that. And the Grihastha ashram awards us to develop selflessness, actually. That's also, and dutifulness, both also it helps us. In that way, actually we're gradually developing required qualities to achieve perfection of life, basically. And then when it becomes 50 years or 55 years maximum, Prabhupada writes in most purports, 99% of the purports 50 years. And then sometimes he gives concession like 55 years. At that time, we should not just stay family, my family, my family, my family, my grandsons, granddaughters, sons, like that. Don't hanker around the family only. But instead, we should shift the focus from material life to spiritual perfection. That means more towards spiritual life. That's how we need to focus. This is the important principle Prabhupada focuses in this section also. And then finally, complete renunciation, like we discussed. It's appropriate for some to finally go back to Godhead. But even from Vanaprastha stage, we can achieve perfection also, like that. So that means we need to prepare for Vanaprastha while we are in Grihastha ashram. How do we prepare for that? By cultivating nice sadhana, by cultivating austerity and simple living, because Vanaprastha life is about austerity, is the primary quality for Vanaprastha. And then also keeping some money aside, so we don't need to worry about working at that time also. Financial stability we need to ensure, and then develop some taste in some particular activity of devotion service. So that way we can serve the institution, serve the society with something. That way we can spend the free time that we get without doing any work. 8 hours of work we're doing. That free time also we can engage in our sadhana and seva also. That's how we can prepare. And then varnas, different varnas are there, like Sudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana, are there to cooperatively work together so that everybody can practice spiritual life and gradually elevate themselves. That is what is being indicated here. And this picture here is showing that they are compared to, Sudra are compared to legs of the Supreme Lord, Vaishya is compared to stomach of the Supreme Lord, Kshatriya are compared to arms of Supreme Lord, as they give protection to the rest of society. Brahmanas are the like intelligence class, that means they are like the head of the Supreme Lord, like that is described. Then I want to show you this briefly also. This showing the different kind of Varnashrama varieties and what is that we are meant to follow. We're meant to follow what is called Daivi Varnashrama or the original Varnashrama. So this is the Daivi Varnashrama is based on ensuring material well-being right now, and also spiritual advancement for everyone also. Not just material well-being, not just spiritual well-being, but both can happen. So the basis of that is guna karma. Remember, based on the different castes are spread, divided based on the guna and karma. That means based on what modes we are in, or what qualities we have, and what kind of work we are doing. That is the basis of dividing the society based on the Devi Varnashma. And then the activity we do is Bhakti Yoga or Karma Yoga. And the highest of these practitioners are the Vaishnavas, not Brahmanas. Brahmanas are Vaishnavas are Brahmanas also, but has a higher realization engaging in Bhakti. And everyone is eligible, not that only if I'm born in Brahmana family, I'm eligible for the Varnashma. And it helps in everybody to achieve spiritual advancement. So the materialistic Varnashma is based on the caste system, based on the birth system. Oh, I'm born as Brahmana, that means I'm Brahmana. I'm born as Vaishya, I'm Vaishya, like that. And what is the goal of that kind of Varnashma? Is primarily based on enjoyment. Oh, I'm a Brahmana, I'm proud, like that, prestige, showing prestige like that. It's primarily to do karma kanda sacrifices to get more enjoyment, like that kind of things. That is the focus of the materialistic or caste-based Varnashma system. Then the spontaneous Varnashma system is the default Varnashma system in the society currently, which is they don't care about anything. They want money, 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 money. That's all. They don't care about scriptures. Whereas this one, at least they do karma kanda sacrifices to follow scriptures. That's so they're at least following some Vedic regulations, so they'll get closer and closer to spirituality, real purity in devotional service. But here, they don't care about scriptures. They're doing vikarma. Vikarma means something against scriptures even. So who is the highest category? Who are the richest is the highest category, like that. So that is a. So basically, I want to summarize this section. Basically, today we heard how Kardamuni assured Devahuti that she will have Kapilideva as her son, and he will award fearlessness to her, and she will achieve perfection. And then we heard how Brahma also issues her, and Brahma guides them to marry their daughter to 9 sages so the progeny can continue, which we'll see in the next chapter onwards. And then we heard how Kardamuni, following the regulations of Vedic injunctions, he took the sannyasa, going away from the home. That's a nice example for us to follow. As Grihasthas, we need to aspire for Vanapastha. Vanapastha ashram, where husband and wife can stay together, not for sex life, but stay together to growing in spirituality. So they can go to holy places like that, Prabhupada writes, and cultivate spirituality and in terms of sadhana and seva more and more, like that. Of course, the exact form and details can vary, whether we do it in a holy place or whether to do it in near the temple. Prabhupada writes in some purports like that also, in Srimad Bhagavatam. But the essential principle is dedicate most of our time to spiritual life, not thinking about what to do with the home, this duty, that duty, this person, that person, whether we go to this birthday party, that birthday party. We don't need to worry about that anymore. That is the basic principle is to focus on spiritual life more, like that. That's how we can achieve perfection. That doesn't mean don't do anything now. We need to cultivate spirituality now so that we can actually benefit from Vanapastha. Otherwise, we'll get 8 hours free time, but we don't feel like doing any devotional service. We'll just sleep. So that's why we need to cultivate taste to read regularly for 4 hours, for example, or chant 4 hours, or do deity worship for a couple of hours, like that. Then when we have taste, we can do Vanapastha also nicely and successfully. So I'll pause here in case anybody has any comments or corrections. Please feel free to share anything. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much for such a beautiful summary class today. I really like initially when you started describing about how a speaker gets sometimes diverted because there was a little bit of diversion and we started learning about Varahadev pastimes. So then you were telling like it is whenever it is diversion also, it's ultimately we are talking about Lord and his activities. and that is giving more rasa. And if speaker won't come, we ourselves as the audience, we interrupt him and say, hey, come on, why are you going here? This is what here, you need to come back. So like that. And anyway, anyway, the whole class, even though it is diverted and went to the other topic, the class will be nectarian class because it's lots activities. And thank you, Prabhu, for that. And also how we should be very attentive to know whether speaker is diverted or not. Because if we are not attentive, we will not understand, right? What
Correct.
speaker is saying. That is also very interesting point. You always give this summary, Prabhu. It will help us. Previous chapters, what we learned, that really helps us, Prabhuji. And also, another point is, sometimes if we are able to guide, we can guide. But then if we see the more senior person than us, we direct them to that person. That is another interesting point. When you're sharing the summary, I could get that. So never think that, oh, I know, then why should I send it to other person? I can guide more than the other person. You should not think like that. We should know what is our position, and we guide to the right person, a devotee to the right person. That is really very good, Prabhuji. And coming on to this chapter, I really like the points about how a sadhu, what is the characters of the sadhu, and how a person, even though if one person cannot become a sadhu directly and dedicate his life, at least being in the married life, in Grihastha ashram, how can we devote ourselves to Krishna, and then finally how to take vanaprastha, and how we can detach ourselves and be always together, but then be detached to ourselves. That is very, very important for us. It doesn't matter in which ashram you are, but you can still practice bhakti. So very, very beautiful class, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for explaining very detailedly each and everything, and especially about this role of Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasi, because we being as a Grihasthas, we have to know the importance of it, and we have to mentally prepare ourselves to come to the stage of Vanaprastha whenever the time comes. So that is the ultimate goal. And I really like the other point is whatever process you are doing, but if you don't have the bhakti, either jnana or any other process, it is incomplete. It is not going to achieve anything. If no prema, bhakti, spontaneous love towards Krishna, then it is hard for us to get into, go back to Krishna. Only the ultimate purpose is having a love for Krishna and go back to Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for such a beautiful nectarian class. I really like your class, Prabhu. It's very simple, easy to understand. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Very grateful to you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Bhante. Hare Krishna. Yeah, actually, when you're sharing, I remember that Prabhupada emphasizes one of the purport, like what you're sharing, irrespective of whatever ashram we are in, we can perform devotional service. And in this case, see, as a householder also, Supreme Lord came face to face for him like that. So, nice point, Mother, you also shared. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada encourages everyone. That is why we are happily able to do our jobs, even though you are telling birthday parties all that. Right now, we are doing everything. But at the same time, we are practicing Krishna consciousness. It's so nice. Prabhupada never said, come, leave everything, come join ashram, come to the temple, stay in the temple as brahmachari. He never said that. Wherever you are living, it's that the house itself is a temple. Do keep the Krishna in the center and practice your Krishna consciousness and make your family as devotees. He's always encouraging. He's always, and many quotes also says that don't neglect your family. You are the first person you are training them to be devotees is your family only. If you're giving your time to your family and not able to do any other services, don't feel sad, because primary duty is that at least you are training your husband and your children. So that must be our main duty. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mother. Hare Krishna.
I request if anybody having any questions or realizations, please go ahead. Harita Mataji and Vrajeshwari Prana Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. That was a very nice class. I joined late, Prabhuji, because I was also attending some other session. So
No
I
problem.
listened the recording. Like whatever Mataji told, I missed few things. So I came to know from Mataji's summary. So that was very nice. And at last, like what you were discussing about various ashramas and how we can practice our bhakti in those ashramas also. And as a gruhastha also how we need to be. It's a great instruction. To I'll take it as an instruction for me also, Prabhuji, because I'm a gruhastha. So I'll take those instructions and will try to follow as much as I can. And thanks for all the points that you have covered and what Vinita Gandharvika Mataji revised. Thank you, Prabhuji. That was
Sure.
wonderful session. Hare
Thank you, Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat pranams.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat pranam, Mataji.
Thank you so much for the wonderful narration, Prabhu. It was very
Welcome.
nice, actually. The flow was so good. I was just thinking that perfect life of Kardama Muni, how he was an obedient son and then did tapasya for 10,000 years. Then Lord gave him a darshan, but then he took a grahastha life to fulfill the service. And then he satisfied the desire of his wife. And finally, Lord himself was born to him. The main verse, the one of the verse in this chapter, like stuck with me today, was the how he's asking Lord Kapila that he wants to renounce and leave home, even though Lord himself is at his home. What a wonderful quality.
Yeah.
Just if you want to follow the Vedic injunction. And I don't know if it's in Prabhupada's purport or some other Acharya's purport that he does not want to mix the rasa between Dasya and Vatsalya.
Right. You're right. Also, yes, correct. That the
Yeah,
Gauranga
that
Darshan Prabhu also
point.
talks about that. Yes.
Yes. Because from birth he is in Dasya mode. Now he became a Vatsalya, like parent, but he does not want to mix. But he
Correct.
wants to constantly remember the Lord. So he leaves the Lord at home and go, and then want to remember the Lord constantly, and then go to spiritual world.
Yeah.
What a wonderful character, and what a wonderful personality to meditate upon. Wonderful exemplary grahastha life, and then finally perfected. But your class was very nectarian, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the wonderful summary. You touched on many important points from Prabhupada and a lot of practical points. And finally, you also touched on the Varnashram Dharma. Can you tell? I didn't catch the book name or the devotee who wrote the book, Prabhu Maharaj.
Okay, it's called Keshav Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Swami. You probably know Sutapa Prabhu, Sutapa Das from UK.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, his new name after sannyasi is called Keshav Swami, Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Swami.
Yes. Okay. So it's a summary book? Is it a summary study?
Yes, summary books for Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitamta. Free PDFs are there on the website, his website actually. KeshavSwami.com. I put it in chat also.
Oh, thank you.
These are very good because he gives the essence of it and also some highlights of bird's eye view, main lesson of the whole section like that. Like for this 4 chapters, he gives the essence as Varnashram Dharma, for example, like that. And in some places, he gives that the essence is understanding our psychophysical nature and how to find the right dharma we need to do, like that. Like that, he gives some essence nicely.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing those resources. That's also very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing about the rasas thing also. That I forgot about that point, but wonderful. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Prabhu, I just want to ask one question. As Mataji mentioned, right? Like Kardama Muni, he enjoyed both Dasya and Vatsalya Rasa. So when Lord himself is with him, can't we be with him there to serve him as Vatsalya? Can't we do that?
Yeah, nice. Those are two reasons that were mentioned. One reason is that he wants to show as example, ideal example, as a Prajapati, wants to show ideal example for all of us to follow. That after Grihastha Ashram, we need to plan for Vanapastha Ashram. That is one reason. And second reason is, which you are asking the question about, he was situated in Dasya Rasa all the time. So because he's situated in Dasya Rasa, one characteristics of our constitutional position is we are situated in one rasa with the Supreme Lord. That means that is the ultimate for us. So that is the best for us and we love it. We don't want anything else. It's like somebody likes one flavor of ice cream. You give him 100 flavors of ice cream that are normally considered higher. Let us say I like vanilla, plain vanilla ice cream. But you like butterscotch or strawberry or some hi-fi ice creams. But still I don't like them. I want only vanilla, like that. Like that, our acharyas describe, once we situated in our rasa, we don't care. Even Madhur rasa is considered higher, Vasal rasa is considered higher, Sakya rasa is considered higher. I don't care. I'm situated in my Dasa rasa, that gives 100% satisfaction to me, and the eternal happiness keeps on increasing like that. So that's why they don't get attracted to another rasa basically. Similarly here, because even though the Lord is at home, he's not ready to exchange with him in Vatsalya rasa. That is, I don't know if that helps, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji, got you. So if whatever I am praying like to Lord in whatever feeling, like he's my Saka or he's my like a Bal Gopal, then I can enjoy that rasa. No need of going for any other rasa. Like we have bhakti
Yeah,
from beginning in that form. So
correct,
let us serve Lord in that rasa.
correct. And one of the good thing is, we all start in Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti in Dasya Bhav only. But that doesn't mean there's a problem or there is a potential issue like that. As we grow in Bhakti, our natural rasa will get revealed by mercy of Spiritual Master and by mercy of Krishna. So even though we're all starting with Dasya Bhava, with Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti currently, with respectful our worship, like the awesome worship. Make sense?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes,
Mm,
Prabhuji. Thanks a
yeah,
lot, Prabhuji.
yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mate. Oh, forgot one more thing to mention while Rajeshwar Pran Mataji was describing. So when Kardamuni was leaving, he entrusted his wife to his son. He didn't irresponsibly go. That's another thing we need to note.
Yeah,
And Prabhupada writes
you
in the
said
purport.
that in the explanation, Prabhuji. You
I
have
tell?
to, yeah,
Okay,
you have
perfect,
to,
good.
you have to do that.
Okay, good. I forgot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was remembering that point because it's not just going like that. He's
Mm.
making sure he gave the proper arrangement for his wife, and then only he just left. You have mentioned in
Correct.
the
Yes, Mate. Perfect. Okay, Mate. We can end here, Mate, then. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Prabhu,
Mate. Yeah.
for the beautiful class and encouraging all of us to read Srimad Bhagavatam. I would like to offer my obeisances. Vanchakalpatarobhyasya kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sundaranand Prabhuji ki
Jai.
jai. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu. Hare
Krishna.
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna, everyone.
Harita Mataji and Vrajeshwari Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank
Hari
you.
Bol.
Hare
Hare Bol.
Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Mataji.